Okay, it's a little bit loud, but let's see how it goes. Okay, so one of the things that happens when you make a string rougher is that you make it softer. Now, what does that mean? Well, if ball pocketing and dwell time are the thing you look for in a tennis string setup, and you want that without having to use a multi-filament string so you get the benefits you get from a polyester, well, then look no further. There are two notable caveats though, and one of them was kind of a deal breaker for me. So, what was it? I'll tell you in a bit. So, I know that this is supposed to be the same string as Torbite, but it kind of feels like a different string altogether. And to help you understand why this is the case, let me tell you why I was interested in this to begin with. I was interested in Torbite because I tried the regular Torbite and I really liked it, but I needed a little bit something more from that string. And I like Torbite primarily because of three things. It has a very satisfying pop sensation when you strike the ball cleanly, which I perceive as great ball pocketing, where it feels like the ball sinks really deeply into the string bed before being released. That, if you're new to the channel, is the most important trait I look for in a string, followed closely by number 2, a lively response, which simply means that the string bed returns to its original position much faster than average after a ball sinks into it and stretches it. That, I think, is part of the reason why it has such a nice pop sensation, but what really elevates it to the next level is the third reason I like Torbite, which is that Torbite also feels very crisp, which really just means that that Torbite also feels very crisp, which really just means that the sweet spot feels very defined. So if you hit outside of said sweet spot, the string bed kind of feels harsh with a lot of vibrations. And a lot of players, including me, like this feeling because it lets me feel exactly where I have hit the ball on the string bed. For me, this is essentially like a self-correcting mechanism that guides me to hit the sweet spot consistently. And hitting the sweet spot is one of the most addictive sensations I've ever experienced in my life and is the reason I play racket sports. It's almost like I put thought into the naming of this YouTube channel. Okay, so what's wrong with this? Well, I kind of wished I could have a softer Torbite, but in a very specific way. For someone who really likes deep ball pocketing, I just wish that the ball could have sunk into the string bed deeper, which brings us to Torbite Diamond Rough. Now, one of the things that happens when you texture strings is that you make them slightly more flexible and a bit softer. So I was hoping that this would be essentially Torbite with all of its wonderful properties, just a bit softer, therefore giving me deeper ball pocketing. So, did I get deeper ball pocketing? Yes, 100% I did. Not only was the ball pocketing deeper, but the string bed was also softer, leading to more power and comfort. And who doesn't want more power and comfort? The amazing thing is that all of this came without sacrificing on any of the things I liked about Torbite Vanilla to begin with. Although, I must add that any claims of comfort should be taken with a grain of salt because this is still a control-oriented poly, and yeah, it's still stiff, albeit a bit softer than Torbite. The amazing thing that still blows my mind is that the softer, deeper ball pocketing didn't come without sacrificing on that lively response that I loved from the original Torbite. Another thing that goes hand in hand with deeper ball pocketing is the longer dwell time you get of the ball on your string bed. And maybe it's just me, but I really feel a lot more precise when I have that longer dwell time. I've heard otherwise, but I'd love to hear from folks in the comments to let me know that I'm not crazy. So, what's the deal-breaking caveat here? Well, it's one that's common to setups like these that do give deeper ball pocketing, which is that the ball pocketing doesn't seem as precise anymore, and you lose some of the awareness of where the ball is in your string bed, which really just is another way of saying that the sweet spot doesn't feel as defined anymore, in the sense that the string feels a little bit mushy. Now, on a spectrum of mushiness to crispness, this string is still a bit crisper than your average string, but it just doesn't retain that crispness that I loved from Torbite. Now, that can be a good thing, right? For some folks, that's exactly what they might need from tour bite, but for me, that's kind of a deal breaker. Ideally, I would have liked to have more give in the string, but very localized, so more of the string bed wouldn't come along for the ride, and therefore, the sweet spot would still retain its defined shape that I loved on the tour bite. I do want to temper this caveat by saying that I am exceptionally sensitive to crispness. This was definitely a deal breaker for me, but you may not care about this at all. The other caveat I want to talk about is the level of spin you get with Diamond Rough. I feel like they advertise that a rougher texture gives you more spin than the regular version of tour bite, but that's definitely not been my experience. What comes through for the most part is the fact that this is a slightly softer version of tour bite. Don't get me wrong, the spin is respectable, but it doesn't match tour bite. And just to make sure I wasn't crazy, I actually used the Tennis Warehouse University's string comparison tool to confirm this. Diamond Rough definitely has less spin potential than both Tour Bite and Tour Bite Soft. I think one way to mitigate this would be to hybrid the string with regular Tour Bite or any other polyester that is really slick. I would personally have Diamond Rough in the mains with the Tour Bite in the crosses, so the rougher texture strings could slide a lot easier on the slippery crosses, therefore giving you more spin. And as always with any discussion about spin, I like to remind people that the racket doesn't swing itself. So for us average Joes, focusing on technique and tactics is a far more reliable way of improving performance on court as opposed to obsessing over any minute differences in spin potential. The most important thing is that you find something that you're mostly happy with, that lets you have a good time on court, and something that lets you consistently improve in small increments so you can let them compound into some meaningful change in your game. So, in summary, if you want good ball pocketing in dwell time and you want to get that without using a multifilament so you can retain some of the benefits you get from a poly, this is the string for you. Just a few caveats being a slightly less crisp feeling you get from this racket or string bed, and a slightly less spin potential. Alright, that's it. I'm gonna go have some dinner. One of them was kind of a deal breaker for me. What was it? Well, of course it was a B. Fuck this shit.